honored to see you sitting there. I think you probably inquired in my main interest. Where did this regulation proposal come from? As far as the ships that go across 4 and 5 different, say 14 different plats, whose bright idea was it?
Well, Congressman, I'll just say that it's rooted, the reason for the rule is rooted back in the Safe Port Act and a requirement to align.
I read that. I wrote that rule. I was chairman of this committee, and that was to be applied only to foreign vessels entering ports. Never to the industry, the oil industry, the crew vessels, etc. Now, where did it come from?
In trying to align it with the notice of arrival requirements that were already standing in our regulations, which was another part of the
but wait a minute, I'm being argumentative right here, but never in the discussion that we wrote that bill was to be applied to cruise ships, etc., that were doing the oil industry's work. Never. Now, if you don't bet on that, I'll bet you $1,000 right now. And where did it come from? Whose brains? The Coast Guard is getting like the other agencies now. You got these little minions down there doing this type thing. Now, why was it put in there?
Sir, I can't tell you whose brain it came out of, but I can tell you that as we sit here today in 2011 and having talked with AMSA about the impact of it, the Coast Guard as an entity saw that rulemaking as part of the fabric of our notice of arrival system across the country, and that was that was an area that we thought was a gap that needed filling. And the Safe Port Act language urged us to complete the rulemaking, and yes, it did say foreign vessels, but the rulemaking that we were working on was broader than that and is based on the Ports Waterway Safety Act, consistent with our notice of arrival fabric that we have across the country, because the Gulf was a major gap both for maritime security and for safety.
But if I'm not mistaken, you know, you have to go to the TWIT program, right? Who are you protecting this from? Every crewman is already cleared by the Coast Guard. I mean, do you know how hard it is to get a TWIT card?
Yes, sir.
Very hard. And you made it harder, especially in Alaska. And yet they're going through it. Now you're going to have a ship that's trying to do the job. And see, my frustration, you know, I'm a big supporter of the Coast Guard. I don't believe you should be in this business. I really don't. You have the TWIT. You take sure these people can turn around and get cleared. And now you're imposing, as agencies have done in this administration, imposing restriction on the development of our fossil fuel industries. Now tell me, where's the justification for it? I mean, who's the threat here?
Well, sir, the distinction is to be drawn between somebody, an individual mariner who holds a TWIC, and vessels that are operating in the Gulf of Mexico. And
now, you clear that vessel. You have to clear the vessel.
I'm sorry, sir?
You have to clear the vessel before it sails, right? But you can't have him clear him when he crosses. Like you say, I am an oil rig, and I need some work right now. I need it right now. I need somebody to service me right now. He doesn't know that, the guy running the ship. And he's got to notify you 24 hours ahead of time? How are you going to do that?
Sir, before you came in, we were discussing with Mr. Landry that question of how do we operationalize it, and I'll defer that back to Admiral Cook. But the notion of having maritime domain awareness within the Gulf to know who's there, who's supposed to be there, and who isn't there, who isn't supposed to be there, is what we're trying to get at there, and it's a significant concern. And we can see the kinds of things that happen looking at Deepwater Horizon in terms of if an evildoer was to get to a rig, and I think that's the concept behind it. And so that's what we're trying to get at.
Don't say try. Let's do it. Because I don't want to impose this type of restriction when I'm on a rig and I need help right now, and he owns the ship and he has to notify you 24 hours, or he could be possibly fined. You see the ridiculousness of the situation? They're there to service the rigs. And so I still want to know what brainchild, there is no pregnancy of somebody being involved. Where did it come from? I'd like to find out. In fact, I'll make that an official request. What brainchild in the Coast Guard did it come from? Because that shows me a lack of knowledge of what the industry is doing. That's my concern. You know, we charge you with search and rescue, drug interdiction, etc. And now you're involved in, I don't see how you can possibly do it unless you change the regulation, or the proposed regulation. I don't see how you have the manpower to do it. especially with this type of budget we're facing right now. I want you to put money into something that does the service that's necessary. And I don't believe this is necessary. Mr. Chairman, I'm over my time right now, but just, you know, do me a favor, guys. Don't get caught into this bogged down EPA, Corps of Engineers, the rest of this. We got to get this country back on the roll of industrial might again, and then we're stopped by regulations that do no good for anybody. You don't need to do that. You're a better agency than that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome.